this work is hard. There's nothing easy about this. There's not going to be suddenly that you're going to say, oh, I'm excited, and everybody's going to come in, they're all going to love you, everybody's going to do what you do. If you accept any excuse for failure, you will fail. Any excuse. So what does that mean? If you got to work Saturdays, you work Saturdays. You got to work Sundays, you work Sundays. You got to work evenings, you work evenings. Anything less than that. Now look, maybe some of you are from some communities I don't. The communities I heard were represented here were those places in America that really need this level of commitment if we're going to turn this thing around. It's not the old paradigm. You know what happens in the old paradigm when people fail in these communities? The kids suffer. The adults stay. Right? Everybody keeps their jobs. Everybody, you write about, oh, that was terrible. Kids did terrible. Ooh. People write articles about it, stories about it. Oh, wasn't that terrible? Did you see those latest numbers? They were terrible. And I say, yeah, I know, we tried. And you come up with lots of reasons it didn't work. And you try next year and it doesn't work. And you try next year. No, our theory is this. The kids fail, you get a new job. Right? That's a theory. I know it sounds a little harsh, but if you're talking about the kind of places I'm talking about, and if that is not your theory, it is not going to work. We have built systems around failure. The whole system is designed knowing these kids are going to fail. Now, I'm not saying you have to walk away from that. I'm saying we have to reorient our thinking, right? We got to do both of these things at the same time, and people get torn behind this dilemma. The crisis is so urgent, none of us would watch a child drown. There's not a person in here who would do it. Any of us who could save that child, we would. And then you'd save the next child. So it's not that it's not good people and good intentions. I'm telling you, we've got a structural problem here that we have to think our way through. And in the end, if we want to save kids, we've got to prevent those kids from ever getting in that water while we don't let the kids drown. And that's going to take some time and some resources. So now let me tell you this last thing, which is that we have to be prepared to think outside the box if we're going to save our children in this country. One of the biggest challenges you all will face is that most people who have been successful at doing something want to continue doing that. And no matter what the problem is, if you have a certain amount of success, meaning you have survived during good times and bad times, that's that issue that Kenneth was talking about, those folks who can adapt, right? And lots of communities, folks have adapted, and we're suggesting that that's terrific, but at the same time, we are in the process of inventing a science that's going to allow us to win, not to just sort of play around the edges, but actually to win in these communities. And to do that, we have to be prepared to think of some innovative and creative ways. Now, there is no problem that we're going to walk away from. There is no problem that we're not going to say that in the end, we think if we collect the data, if we look and see whether or not we accomplished our mission, if we have failed, we're going to come up with a different strategy, a better strategy. We are simply not going to continue to do the same thing and accept failure as an option. For us, the idea of using tough things as a way of building the science so that we can actually say, something I didn't know last year, I know this year. That's how we're going to make this field advance. That's how we're going to solve these tough problems. And some of you, in thinking about the things going on in your community, you're going to say, oh my goodness, but you don't understand what's going on in Baltimore. Or you just don't understand what's happening in Kansas City or in Chicago. Let me tell you why this is so different. Look, it is the same challenge that we all face in every single one of these communities, or you wouldn't be in this room. If this was something that someone could have just figured out and solved and it was easy, you wouldn't need to be here. So if you are here, it is because we are all looking to push this science up a notch, and it is not going to be the same thing in every community. My challenge to you is to understand that this is war. This is war. And unless your community is different than mine, you've got to be prepared to go to war. We were in Detroit, and I was giving a talk to folk there at the independent sector about leading from the front. That in our business, if you're not prepared to lead from the front, this is the wrong business to be in. Everybody thinks that you can solve these problems by being really good in responding to email, right? And I got my emails done, and I got on top of it. I feel like I'm making progress today, right? And we know the kind of places we're talking about, that is not going to be what's going to save our children. In the end, if the adults don't come out, form their own army, and fight for children, this thing is simply not going to work.